Hi everyone. My name's Melissa Sinclair. I'm the General Manager of APN Cape York. I was just reflecting whilst we were listening that 10 years ago, APN was sort of considering how do we monitor if we're achieving what we want to achieve. And we're still sort of asking those questions. When APN was being formed between 2009 and 2011, the elders at that time were very clear with those of us who were working with the company at that time to establish it, that they didn't want the company to be dependent on government grants. So we've always been considering what are the ways in which traditional owners and the people from that country can do the things that they want to do and create livelihoods in ways that are sustainable. And that has led us to where we are with carbon. It makes us open to ideas about payment for ecosystem services, but we're also still very much working with grants to continue in sort of getting to a point where we can say we might have achieved some of what we wanted to do. So in that way, we've been engaging with the carbon markets. Like a couple of years ago, we agreed to sort of consider to do a carbon project with the Queensland Land Reforestation, LRF, Land Restoration Fund. And in order to do that, there was a couple of things that we needed to do, which was also consider the co-benefits of the fire management that we were thinking about implementing. And this method is about the environmental co-benefits that we can achieve and how we can monitor it going forward. So for the past couple of years with the Queensland LRF and with some funding from the Indigenous Land and Sea Corporation, Gabrielle's been down deep in methodology development, working with the rangers, flying out to sites, looking at things both from the air as well as pulling the most tiny things out of the ground and bringing them back to file them. And, I do think that this process, outside of actually doing what we need to do to answer our questions about the impact that we're having, it also helps us talk to possibly people that are investing in our company so that they can have confidence in the evidence that we give them about the impacts we're having. And Gabrielle and Daryl and Ben have been critical in some of the work that APN's been doing. So with that, I'd like to actually hand over to Gabrielle to introduce the work.
Hi guys, and thank you Mel, and thank you also to the Larrakia for having us on this beautiful country. I'm going to have my computer here so I can look at my notes and hopefully be speedy, because I know I'm keeping us all from snacks. So hopefully what this is about makes a bit more sense by the end. This is a very brief overview of something that unfortunately is by necessity quite complex. So we're just going to do a pretty quick what, why, where, how, when, and who can use it. So first of all, what is it? It's a method to measure the environmental outcomes from fire management, but it has third-party verification. So it's essentially a way, we hear about things like the nature repair bill or payments for ecosystem services, but we don't necessarily hear a lot about how Savanna burning projects might be able to participate in programs like that. And when I watch the talks today, I can see that so many groups are already doing the work, but maybe what they don't have is the framework that fits into the International Environmental Accounting Standards. And this is really an attempt to build that framework. So it's like a carbon project in that you change your burning a bit, you have to do activities and you have to measure those activities. Yeah, I think I'll leave that one. But unlike a carbon project, you're not just getting paid for carbon abatement, you might be being paid for looking after threatened species habitat or for wetlands or something. So burning for the environment is a little bit different to burning for carbon. It's We all know that, I think, but one example is, say, the gallery forest, which we know is important for plants and animals and people, but in a carbon project we just ignore that. So in this method, that becomes one of the key things you monitor and measure, as well as other things. Why would you do it? Well, most of the reason, I think, is because many people think of it as the core benefits of carbon. It's really where you show the good work that you're doing, and you see those better outcomes for country, and maybe as climate change kicks in and as things continue to change, we make sure we can continue burning in the right way for country. Where can you do it? You can do it as the same place as a carbon project. It's designed to sit on top of a project, but you can add that swamp that's next to the project to this kind of accounting for nature project. This is the overview. I'm not going to go into that. I'm going to give you the real basic how you actually do it. And it's very much as all these other groups have done. So the first thing you do is you map the special environmental values of your project area. You think about the fire needs of them. You think about other threats that are impacting them. And maybe you think about what you want to manage that country for. Because if you want to manage it for cattle, that means it's going to have a different environmental value to if you want to manage it for conservation. So from there, you set goals for your fire regimes. Each project sets their own goals, but there are some minimum standards. These are a very basic description of the kinds of things you monitor. They're a little bit more complicated than that, but that's a quick proxy there. So then you probably need to change your burning. Now, for most projects, it's going to be, like many projects might already be doing this, right? But compared to some of the larger carbon burns where you see big fire scars still, it might be patchier, more attention paid to fire-sensitive vegetation and more attention paid to long unburnt, and that's because we know that's what's good for the plants and animals. But like I said, each project selects their own target, so it's not me telling you this is what's good for your plants and animals, it's you setting your own targets. And then you do an awful lot of monitoring. So a lot of remote sensing using fine-scale fire scars, and then quite a bit of field work as well. So for projects like many of the talks we've seen today, they could essentially, with probably a bit of tweaking, slot right into a method like this. The reporting, it follows the standard accounting for nature reporting. So accounting for nature is a third-party verification body. There's an information statement that goes online that describes it. Every 5 years you update your account table, so all of that monitoring data builds up and you get a score for each of your assets, like your wetlands, and then an overall project score. You also do a self-verification or get audited every 5 years. So obviously this is a pretty big ongoing process. It's a big commitment, and hopefully it's a worthwhile one. Who does it? Well, like the talks we've all just seen, it's best when people work together to do it. When we learn from the deepest knowledge of country and from what science is telling us about how country is changing. Things like how cats are impacting native animals when we put out like 500,000 camera traps or however many have been out over time. So there's quite a few optional ways in which you can participate, and at some of the higher levels, projects would definitely need probably at least quite a bit of support in the setup and the ongoing evaluation, but there's also some levels where really it can really be very much a ranger-driven exercise. As I said, you can also work with partners you already have. There isn't necessarily any extra third parties involved. That's a little bit more about the different confidence levels, which is the options for the levels you participate at, but I won't stick on that. So my big thanks to Alpurnagantum and the Wick and Wickway and Kugu people from Western Cape York, who have, I think, been really long-sighted in commissioning this work, to ILSC, who's provided some funding for it, the Queensland Government and their Land Restoration Fund, again, quite long-sighted. Accounting for Nature spent about 20 years developing the framework, and that also feeds back into a big international effort. And my particular thanks to the Tropical Savanna Burning Reference Group, who field my queries and involve a lot of ecologists and some people from NASMA and some people from the carbon market and who I've gone to when I have a bit of an issue I can't quite resolve and need some help with and to think through. Tiny bit about me, I'm an ecologist. Most of my work is directly for traditional owners on Cape York. I'm an approved advisor with Accounting for Nature and under the Land Restoration Fund as well. So thank you for listening. Hopefully I managed to keep that quite brief.